Thank you for joining us for our weekly Cannabis Connection webinar series. I am your host, Jamie Cooper, the founder of Cannabis Connection. And today I am joined by our staffing and payroll founding member, Anthony Sabatella of THC 123. Today we're going to talk about developing a staffing plan for your cannabis business and specifically for a MMFLA facility license. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jamie. How about yourself?
Really well. I have been seeing you all over the place lately.
I'm busy, trying to provide some value here for this wonderful industry.
Right. And boy, things are starting to move quickly. Last week we had our first license approvals. We were kind of talking about that.
Mhm.
Like, I look at it as like this is the official kickoff of the industry. We're here.
We're writing history. We're writing history as we speak.
Yes, we are. Well, Anthony, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and THC 123.
All right. Well, THC 123 is an employment solutions company based in Metro Detroit that provides payroll, staffing, and compliance solutions to the medical marijuana industry. My background is with America's Back Office, which is a industry leading PEO. I believe we're the largest privately held PEO in the Midwest, and we process north of $300 million in payroll a year in all 50 states. That's the infrastructure and that's the engine that runs THC 123. I'm able to take that infrastructure and the 2 decades of success and pivot it here and provide those solutions to the medical marijuana industry here in Michigan, but also in all 50 states once we expand and federal legalization is pushed through.
It's coming. It's definitely coming. Recreational is going to be on the ballot here in Michigan in November. We have revamped our medical licensing. Man, I have to tell you, for last 4 years, boy, the conversation has truly changed. I feel like we have hit that turning of the what would be like the turning of the tide or whatever.
Definitely. Having the MMFLA enacted has definitely been a catalyst for business and for simple, money and then resources coming to this industry. With as much private money that's been invested here in the cannabis industry. And now that we have some strong governmental leaders that understand our mission, understand, our service as healers, we're starting to make some headway.
Absolutely. Well, how do we develop a staffing plan? This is one of the requirements of the stage 2 of licensing. The state wants to see a staffing plan. What does one look like?
Well, start off here. This is the needs list for all of the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act applicants. This is directly out of the instruction booklet for the MMFLA application. I believe this is on page 40. It states for employee information that's needed. For part 2, applicants need to provide answers to the following questions. How many employees will work at a facility? How many managerial employees will work at a facility? And then whether those employees will be employed as W-2 employees or independent contractors. Those are also referred to as 1099 employees. Furthermore, they go into requesting a description of your staffing plan for any marijuana facility and the supporting documentation. And this is not limited to, but some of the things I'm going to touch on today are the job descriptions, hiring procedures, employee training, storage and security of employee records, and then also day-to-day operations.
Awesome. It looks really good. I mean, that's a lot that they're wanting to see.
And truly so. The MMFLA is an arduous process to become licensed, but I think the thorough vetting is needed for the industry, just not to distinguish who should and who shouldn't work, but who has the resources and who has a solid business plan to have this work and to have this work for continuity. And that is truly what Laura, the licensing and regulatory agency, is really narrowing in on, to see who's here to help this industry and who has the resources available to them at this time.
Absolutely.
The first question asked is, how many employees does my cannabis business need? And, there's multiple different ways you can take a look at this. A lot of these should be part of a general business plan, at least looking out 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, up to 5 years, is how is my cannabis business going to grow? And then how many employees do I need to start? And then obviously to reach each one of my short-term and long-term goals, I'm going to need a strong labor force to do so. A small shortcut to help determine, at least initially, how many employees are needed would be this following calculation. If, let's say, for example, you have 4 employees that work on average, and they work about 8 hours a day. We'll call that 32 hours, man hours per day. We would multiply that by how many days this cannabis business is open per year. And that's going to let you know the amount of man hours needed per year for your cannabis business. After dividing that by 1,680 man hours per year, which is the average hours spent at work for a full-time employee. Now, most people will look at and say, well, if I have a full-time employee of 40 hours a week and there's 52 weeks, shouldn't that number be about 2,080? And people are absolutely correct, but what you need to factor in when calculating how many employees you need is time off, is vacation time, is sick time, and these things need to be understood and calculated in how many employees that your cannabis business needs, or you're going to be understaffed. And the problem with being understaffed is you're going to have higher man hours worked per employee, and then you're going to open yourself up to federal overtime regulations and having to pay a salary at 1.5 times their standard rate is going to increase any business's labor costs. And that truly, as a business owner, is what we're looking to decrease and not increase.
I love this formula. I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. I mean, because we've had 600 applications submitted, and I don't think there's a whole lot that have already submitted this piece of information to the state. They're kind of waiting on that pre-approval. And I think, this is going to be really helpful to those that have already submitted their application or haven't done so, and helping them put together that staffing plan that's required.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is a short-term formula. If a client was interested in, actually getting down to brass tacks and seeing how many employees does my cannabis business truly need, THC 123 is available to provide some of that data and to help mitigate some of these requests from the MMFLA. But also there's other great companies out there as well, such as ICS Consulting, who operate in the HR space as well, and will definitely be able to help with calculations such as these, and also looking at training for managers for your cannabis business.
Awesome. Shout out to our founding member, Jenny with ICS. Woo!
Hi, Jenny. That brings us to our next point. How many managers do I need if I know how many employees I have? And this is truly unique, and it's dependent on many factors of each cannabis business. Whether the vertical that your company is located in one of the 5 different types of licensing, the scale of your project, the infancy or growth stage that your project is in as well. Also, it comes down to personal, beliefs and what you're looking for your business. Some companies prefer smaller manager to employee ratios. This allows for more coaching and mentoring of those employees and will really help get your staff up to par and running as efficiently as possible in a short amount of time. Some companies that have been structured and have been in the industry for a multiple of years, they might prefer larger manager to employee ratios since they have experience and efficient managers part of their staff already. Typically, though, most cannabis companies usually have a manager per every 5 to 7 full-time employees.
Good to know, yes. I was sitting here, sorry, sometimes I look down, I'm sitting here writing notes, because this is really great information for when people watch this later.
Absolutely. Did anybody else have any questions at this time?
Yeah, guys, this is your chance to ask Anthony questions. You can do so by putting your questions in the chat option, or you can use the Q&A feature to submit a question. As always, Anthony will give his contact information at the end of the slideshow. So if you have questions after the fact, you will be able to get a hold of Anthony in that way, or you can reach out to me and we can help. But, this is the time to get to your answers right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The next piece that the MMFLA touches upon is whether you're using 1099 or W-2 employees. And there's no right or wrong way to utilize these concepts or a combination of both employment models. But to decrease your business liability and decrease your risk, as a business owner, you should know the difference between the two. A 1099 employee is also referred to as an independent contractor. These are self-employed people. These are people that you may bring in your cannabis facility that are their own boss. They make their own hours. They charge their own rates. And they're there to provide a service for your cannabis business. A W-2 employee, also referred to as your business employees, they help you provide your services. These are the people that clock in, that you create schedules for, that you create the hours for. You determine the course and the scope of their work directly, and you provide them the tools. The IRS has a wonderful list online on their website that has, I believe, 24 different questions that go, and it'll really help you delineate whether you are working with a 1099 or if those employees should be W-2. And these are truly something a business should pay attention to, because if the Department of Labor and then the Wage and Hour Division do feel that your employees are not 1099 and they're misclassified, and they're truly W-2 employees, they will look for back taxes for the different payroll taxes, workers' compensation premiums, and things of that to help rectify the period of incorrect classification, so to speak. The biggest factor is the degree of control on those employees, like I said. Looking at behaviors, does the company controller have the right to control what the worker does for his or her job? If they don't, that employee is more potentially a 1099 employee. If we really do control what that employee is doing in their course and during their workflow, odds are they're a W-2 employee. And then looking at it on a financial side, is the business aspects controlled by the payer? Obviously, are these people paid in a check, either weekly or bi-weekly? Are these expenses reimbursed to these 1099/W-2 employees? And who really provides the tools to allow them to do their job? What the governmental bodies will look at first is the type of relationship that's written through the contract between your cannabis facility and your employees. Are there written contracts in place? Are there employee type benefits such as pension plans, different types of insurance, vacation pay, etc.? And that's truly how you should look at delineating whether you have 1099 or W-2 employees. And I truly think Laura is looking to make sure that your employees for your cannabis business are classified correctly on this form.
Okay, I have two questions. The first one is, what types of positions do you see in these licenses that are contractors and ones that are employees?
Let's say maybe on the cultivation side, if you brought in somebody who is going to help with your efficiency or your grow yield, and you bring in a contractor to help with lights or help replace the soil, they work maybe 2 to 3 weeks at your location and leave. Those ones would be more of an independent contractor. But if, let's say, you have 4 different growers that come in that you schedule to come in to work at your facility, you pay, you provide the tools, and then you provide the guidance and control. Those are W-2 employees.
Okay. And then can anyone with a criminal background be a contracted employee?
That is a good question. I think the determining factor is the type of criminal activity. I know Laura has not, in Section 405, when they require the background screen to be ran, they request a federal background screen on all employees, including contracted employees, and they are looking for felonies within the last 10 years. So I truly think it determines what the relationship is, number one, what the criminal background is, number two. But ultimately, I believe each employment's relationship is unique, and that would be a great question for Laura to answer directly.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony.
Mm-hmm. The next part of this presentation is building the staffing plan. And there's multiple parts to all staffing plans, and they can be broken down and expanded upon very well. But the key parts to look at are job descriptions, the hiring procedures for your firm, employee training for your firm, and maintaining personnel files. All of these things, THC 123 would be able to help provide for your cannabis business. The first part to start is job descriptions. And the first question to be asked is, what are job descriptions? And the job description is specifically a document that describes general tasks or other related responsibilities of a position. It may specify the function and who that position reports to, the specifications, such as the qualifications needed for that job, and also the salary range. And to kind of put together job descriptions, you should really look at these 7 components, and they all should be mentioned in your job description. First off is the job title. If you're hiring for a master grower, list master grower. If you're looking to hire for an entry-level grower, list, junior grower, or a straightforward job title. The last thing you want is to have ambiguity in your job title, or you're going to have people that may not have the background or the specifications that you're looking at, and that is just going to create a administrative process, which is going to cost you time and labor. Moving forward from the job title, you need to list the job objectives and or the job duties. What is this person going to be doing in this role? What are the day-to-day operations? What is the function for this job? Why is this job in existence? And those are the questions you need to look to answer in filling out what the objectives are. Thirdly is the job role. How does it fit into the organization? Who do I report to? What team under me do I manage? How am I supposed to manage them? What is expected of me? Additionally, we would look at location. Is this a traveling position? Is this working on my home? Is this a remote location? Do I have to drive from, maybe one cultivation facility to another cultivation facility? These are all things that should be brought up just so everybody's expectations are met in the hiring process. Fifth would be your remuneration. That's how much money. What is the benefits for this position? Some, it might just be money. Others, they might have a profit sharing availability, employee benefits. What is attractive to the employee for this position? And next would be requirements and qualifications. What are you expecting this employee to know? What tools does this employee need to be beneficial? What tools do they need to make this work, to make this a long-lasting job and a career for them? Because if you aren't specific with your requirements or your qualifications, unfortunately, you may have a employee that gets put into a role that they're truly not qualified for, or don't have the background to make it work. And the issue there is labor costs are going to go up, turnover is going to happen, and it's usually said that a company will spend between, I believe the number was 30 to 100% of the salary of a position to market to fill that position. That's their internal cost for HR to, kind of build that wheel to get that employee in that seat. So there is a lot of hidden costs in HR that a lot of companies may not assume because they don't see it directly on their P&L sheet. But we really need to start looking at the amount of hours spent by your company handling these administrative tasks, because you can then take a look at those hours and put a numeric monetary value on what that time was spent and what that true hidden labor cost is for your company.
Right. Thank you.
The last piece I didn't touch on was your business. Who are you? Who is looking to fill this job? I think this is the best place where a company can expand on their brand, expand on their mission statement, and expand on what they're looking to do for the community and what your role is within that firm. There's other things that can go into job descriptions, but I truly feel that these 7 need to be talked about in each job description. Next would be hiring procedures. And most people think, shouldn't hiring be easy? I find a great candidate and they should be working, right? Unfortunately, hiring, it should be a multi-step process if it's done correctly. And efficient hiring practices and procedures, they will decrease employee turnover and decrease your labor costs. To do so, there's about 8 procedures that need to be followed to make sure that there are really no loose ends and this is being done as efficiently as possible. Initially, you need to either identify the vacancy or evaluate the need for this new hire. If somebody just left, what are the position descriptions that this employee filled? Or if this is a new position, what are we looking to have this employee accomplish? What is the need for this new employee to be in our facility? If you don't have a true description, then you're just increasing your labor costs and truly not providing scope to this employee. Thirdly, it would be develop a recruitment plan. How are we going to try to find this employee? What job boards are we going to? What labor unions are we going to look at? How are we going to get this position filled? And I think developing that plan is truly a huge piece of the hiring procedure checklist. And I say that because THC 123 has a recruitment plan, that is multifaceted. We're initially putting out any of our job descriptions to 19 different job boards with the ability to place strategic advertising as well. We then will bring those employees into our system based on the job that they're looking to fill. We're then going to create a short list after reviewing these employees, whether they have a strong background or a strong skill set to transition into this industry. After that, we will conduct the phone interviews, potentially in-person interviews, score these employees, and then look to present the most qualified employees to cannabis businesses. And I believe every cannabis business using THC or not needs to have some sort of recruitment plan so they can follow these procedures closely and then scale those metrics. As I talked on, posting that position, implementing the recruitment plan, reviewing the applicants, creating that short list, handling the interviews, and then eventually selecting the hire at that point. The last piece is to finalize that recruitment. That's presenting a letter, an offer letter to that employee, receiving their acceptance back, having an employment contract signed with that employee that delineates the role of that employee, the functionality of that employee, the salary as well, and then also circle back with all of the non-chosen applicants and let them know that the position was filled.
Okay, one question that I wanted to ask is, I mean, I look at this industry almost like a manufacturing industry. So would any of these positions require drug testing?
Drug testing, I definitely believe so, especially initially is processing. You know, I think processing and cultivation, there are, you know, large machines at work. And I do believe drug testing is necessary, maybe, and I say that because it is necessary from a risk management standpoint. You know, obviously being involved in the cannabis industry, we all have a very liberal understanding as cannabis is medicine and truly not a drug. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of patient rights, but also decrease employer liability, and because the last thing we need is somebody under the influence. I think it's very fair and compromisable for cannabis businesses to allow CBD and non-psychotropic cannabis use in the workplace. I believe, you know, patients should not be looked down upon for using products derived with THC in them on their own free time, but treated similar to alcohol use in the workplace. The biggest thing in manufacturing, it's not drug use, it's fatigue. Fatigue is the biggest reason for workplace injuries to occur. And all workplace injuries will increase your total incurred losses on your insurance policy, and in turn, they're going to increase your premium in the next 4 years.
Yeah, and I know you and I have had this conversation before. I mean, it's probably when I go out to mainstream networking events, business networking events, that's one of the most common questions I get from business owners, because there are many business owners that own manufacturing companies that do want to allow their employees to consume on their own free time, but it's just so hard for that safety standpoint, and the fact that there is not accurate testing showing if someone is impaired on the job.
I think we just need to change our perspective on that. We are so used to using drug testing and signs that there is some sort of chemical within a human's body, but it doesn't truly correlate in whether that drug had any impairment effect. The way we need to take a step back and not utilize drug testing initially, because it doesn't give us the correct answer to the problem in which we're seeking an answer. There is a company, I may not have the name correct, but it's Active Alert, I believe, and they do standardized baseline testing. For example, each day you would sign into your computer, log on to your time management system, and then take your Life Alert baseline test. This is a small test that is a small little problem-solving test that will take between 15 and 30 seconds usually. And then every day you do this and create a baseline. What an employer can do then is, let's say somebody comes back from lunch and you are under the assumption, or you have probable cause that this person is under the influence of some sort of narcotic or anything, or even fatigued. Have them take that active alert test. That'll then tell you how that person is operating and how they are relating to the task at hand. If you see that person is outside their standard deviation of what they usually come in at, and that happens a few times, you probably have reasonable suspicion to then determine that person is under the influence. I think we need to change, our tools that we use here in HR, in the workplace, obviously to treat marijuana how it needs to be treated. But also we need to bring, what was the term? Fatigue into play, seeing that fatigue is the largest cause of workplace injuries, and there is no baseline test for that. So I believe we really need to start testing for that first, and drugs in the system secondary if you have an issue with fatigue and or impairment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anthony. Great answers.
Next piece of building a staffing plan is employee training. And employee training is vital to the success of your cannabis business, and that's to prevent employee turnover and potential HR and risk management issues. We need to have some sort of training and development program in place, and the key to that is that properly trained employees have a lower turnover rate. Like I said, if we're all out here looking to decrease our labor costs, thus to increase our profitability, employee turnover rate, it can be an Achilles heel for a business, and they really need to have be on the right side of that and have some progressive training in place to have a value add for those employees to attract strong employees. Some of these types of employee training would be just formal training sessions. This can be done on an individual basis or on a corporate level. Employee coaching or mentoring by an outside consultant such as ICS consulting, or even by a business owner for their employees. On the job training by a manager for a brand new employee might be very beneficial, just to kind of show them the ropes, so to speak. Job shadowing for brand new employees to really see a person handling the job duties correctly, and so that employee can then emulate those responsibilities. It's always good to have somebody job shadow, probably one of your best and brightest employees. That way they receive the correct skill set and the correct needs moving forward. Lastly, job rotation. Some provisioning centers may find job rotation is a value add to their facility because it promotes flexibility. It allows your employees to work multiple different jobs, so you have more utility players that can fill in if you do have an employment gap.
So as a business owner, tell me if you agree with this statement. As a business owner, it's important for you to know every position within your company.
I believe so. If that business owner is impacting the day-to-day operations of that facility, if not, at least the manager of each position should be able to handle the functions of that position underneath them, because that's truly the manager's role, is to make sure and maintain that these processes are being completed correctly. And then, like I said, that should facilitate all the way up to the highest person who is handling the day-to-day operations of that facility.
Okay.
Some corporate training opportunities. There's equal employment opportunity training to make sure that things are being done correctly and no civil rights violations are occurring. There's diversity training dealing with different types of people. Fortunately, I truly do say fortunately, because I do believe it's a huge industry advantage. Cannabis is one of the largest so diverse socioeconomic and, diverse in regards to background worldwide. We have people and cannabis visionaries coming from all around the world with all different backgrounds. And I truly think, having such a melting pot of diverse people, it really benefits for our industry. Third would be leadership management. If you have a new manager, if you believe your management team may need some efficiency training, this can help your cannabis business. And then also conflict resolution. How can we deal with a small conflict and qualm that issue before it creates a large issue, and now that issue is a risk management issue for your business? The way I truly look at it, and the THC 1-2-3 model is there should be a culture developed within your organization that promotes success through training and development. And then training and development for your employees should be a cornerstone of your HR department. It's only going to benefit your business. And seeing how many people are investing money into the cannabis industry, I mean, the first place this cash and these funds and these resources need to be invested is within your firm as a whole. And the heartbeat of that is your employees.
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
Was there any other questions out there?
It looks like we do not have any questions right now.
I'll keep moving then. Lastly, maintaining personnel files. And this piece is not common knowledge. A lot of people find, the ability and the how to maintain personnel files is after they've had a run-in due to their files not being handled correctly. Things if the Department of Labor will look for is having I-9s and having W-4s on file. And I'll get into that shortly. The key factors for maintaining personnel files for your employees is security and confidentiality. And what I mean by security is HIPAA compliance. Now, HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act. That states that medical data should only be viewable to somebody who has a bona fide reason to and a pertinent reason to view that data. Other than that, that data should not be viewed by anybody in the facility. The way to handle that is maintain these files in a locked file cabinet and ensure only access to the files to the appropriate people. Confidentialities, only those people and those employees designated to have a bona fide, qualified reason to look at those files by upper management should have access to them.
And are there any agreements, employment agreements that these employees will need to sign to just make sure that you're protected within?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say there's any standard. There's any standard contract, but it should be understood that the Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act needs to be filed needs to be followed by employers. And then if anybody's interested in some further information, on HIPAA compliance, please feel free to reach out with those specific questions.
Okay.
The required file content for personnel files is their application, the employee's resume, their I-9, and their W-4. A notice regarding overtime compensation for your W-2 employees and for the non-overtime exempt employees. Now, the only overtime exempt employees should be at bare minimum on the managerial level, and they should be salary. There is some other guidelines along those, so if people are interested in that as well, please feel free to reach back out. Lastly, the emergency contact, if God forbid anything would occur. Additionally, any kind of honors, awards, promotions work well and are great to be added into personnel files, and alternatively, write-ups and any disciplinary notices. These are really need to be addressed, especially if you have persistent problems with an employee. Without having these documented write-ups, it is going to be difficult to attempt to defend against an unemployment claim if that employee was fired for obviously not handling his job responsibilities correctly and to par. So that is one of the great pieces of utilizing a PEO is our HR department will fight any sort of unemployment claim that comes for your cannabis business on your behalf. And then we also help with the HIPAA compliance, and we have a cloud-based software that can house all of these employee personnel files and house them either available to the employer and or the employee. So we do have a lot of flexibility there for our clients. Prohibited file content would be medical information on employee or their dependents, and not saying that content can't be held. We would just need a separate medical file necessary that isn't viewed, and that's only viewed by people who have the authority to and have a pertinent reason to view those files.
And can employers ask for, like, can they ask their employee if they're a medical marijuana card holder?
I know that I believe that would be a pertinent question. Currently, seeing underneath the transitional rules, those bud tenders are caregivers. So I believe that would be a bona fide reason. But moving forward, Laura has alerted us that the MMFLA will not need caregivers and have people with a medical marijuana card to work in those facilities. So at that step, I would feel that would be HIPAA protected material, just similar to, if somebody had a background with, cancer or some other sort of medical background. I do believe, seeing that the cultivation facilities do have to have a caregiver with 2 years of experience, that would then be bona fide.
Okay. And what are the no questions to, well, I'll let you go. I'm going to ask you after you get through this.
Okay. Next is the day-to-day operations for your cannabis business. These are all going to vary based on your vertical that you're located in, whether it's cultivation, processing, the safety compliance in the lab, secure transports, and ultimately the provisioning center. All of these facilities have common operational management common points, specifically equipment and facilities management and the costs associated with those, maintenance management and the costs associated with keeping your operation completely functional, the labor force that creates the mechanism and creates your operation, the budgets for each one of your operational line items, whether that is a crop or whatever your product is, those need to have operational budgets. And then all of this is going to funnel into how you will have your planned operating profit margin calculated. And that number should at least be qualified within a specific percentage for your cannabis business on your Part 2 of your application.
Okay.
Other than that, I believe that should wrap up the majority of the staffing plan that's needed for Part 2 of the MMFLA. If there's any direct questions or direct needs, feel free to reach back out to myself here at THC123, and I have my contact information below if you have any questions or concerns.
Awesome. Okay, so now this is your chance, guys, to ask questions. I have a couple of questions for Anthony, but if you have questions, again, you can use the chat feature or use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. The question I was about to ask earlier was, so what kind of questions may you not or should you not ask and employee potential?
I would not ask them anything that would describe a personal characteristic that can be used negatively. Whether that could be as simple as age. If let's say you see a wonderful candidate and they have boatloads of experience, and you may ask them, well, wow, you have such a vast amount of experience. How old are you? That right there can be looked upon and used as a qualifier. If that person did not get that job, they could say, oh, I was discriminated against by my age, by my sex, by my religion, by my national origin, by my orientation. Anything that really touches on the personal level of a person other than their skill set really should not be asked. Things like, oh, do you have any medical needs that we should know about? You can't ask that. You can't ask that sort of question. That's against the Americans with Disabilities Act. You can ask, all right, this job has to specifically lift up to 20 to 30 pounds 2 times a day. Would you need any help, handling that sort of function? You can ask a question worded like that, but you can't ask strict medical questions, anything about that kind of person's background, their age, anything that really would touch a civil liberty and the Civil Rights Act.
Okay, thank you. And that's why we have you as a founding member, to help guide these businesses about what you can and what you shouldn't do.
Absolutely. If anybody was interested in having me look over kind of the questions that they are asking in job interviews, I have absolutely no problem offering some guidance on those as well.
Okay. And then can you give us a little bit of range about the number of employees that are required per license? Like how many employees are we looking at typically for a provisioning center?
I think that that is based relative on the operation. Some of the larger 6,000 plant grows are going to have different numbers than a smaller type grow. I definitely think the provisioning center, based on just average guidelines, I would say between 8 and 10 has kind of been the norm. The grows and processing facilities, based on their operations and their scalability, would range. And I think I would kind of want to look at some industry data first there before I shot some numbers off the cuff there, just because, like I said, cultivation, they have the ability to stack those license. And then if they then implement that through the entire vertical, they may be able to cut some employees out or use employees, for multiple pieces, such as the cultivation and the processing, and look to utilize their resources then efficiently.
Right. I mean, our first cultivation license was a 6,000 plant cultivation.
So, absolutely. The schematics and to make that firm operational is going to be vastly different than somebody who's looking for just a 500 plant Class A grow.
Right. Well, Anthony, thank you so much, as always, for your time today. Very valuable information for our audience. Really quick, I want to give a huge thank you to our founding partners, founding members like Anthony with THC 123. This is all of our other founding members that we have. These are our experts, the people that we put together these webinars with to help teach those building a business how the ins and outs and what to do, what not to do, those sorts of topics. And we'll be having Anthony back over the next couple of months to address a couple of other topics that we have in mind. And then July, so last week we had Jenny with ICS Consulting. You can go back and watch that webinar on our website, cannabisconnection.com. And what you'll have to do is to access that, you'll have to sign up for a free account. Once you do that and you get into the back end, there will be a tab called the Learning Academy. And just click on the tab and you can see all of our past webinars over the last several months. And then next week, we have Aaron with National Cannabis Security Services talking talking about promoting safety and security from cultivation to consumption. And then the last Tuesday of the month, we will be talking with Brian Town of Cola Marketing. He's my partner, and we're going to be talking about how to build a memorable cannabis brand. So a lot of great information coming up, and that continues into August and September and all that fun stuff. And then, we are launching cannabis business networking events this month. So join us next Thursday, the 26th from 5 to 7. We are going to be hosting these events on the last Thursday of every month. Ann Arbor, Anthony is spearheading the Ann Arbor event at the session room. And then we have Aaron with National Cannabis Security Services, who is spearheading our event in Detroit, or actually Warren. So make sure that you get there. This is your chance to connect with others in the cannabis industry, whether it be investor potentials, team members, partner potentials, you name it. I mean, it's time for us to come together and start networking. We are going to be hosting these events in 10 different areas of the state. We will have all chapters launched by the end of the year. It's looking like August, we're going to launch our Lansing, Grand Rapids, and maybe even Traverse City. And we're looking for some partners in like Flint and Bay City. So if you are interested in hosting these events, please feel free. Just shoot me an email or reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. And again, don't forget to sign up for your Cannabis Connection account. You will be able to access all the webinars. You'll get on our email list where you'll know about all of our events coming up and access to industry resources and insights. And I tell you what, Lara is dropping down bulletins quite often now, and we try to be one of the first to put that information out there. So thank you all. As always, that wraps up our broadcast for today. And thank you again, Anthony of THC123 for being here, our staffing and payroll founding member. And don't forget to join us every week for our weekly Cannabis Connection webinar series right here. Until then, have a wonderful day.
Stay lifted.